In Major Glenn Ignacio, former U.S. Air Force Special Operations Commander. I'm interested, Major, in the supply lines, because if we look here, no matter what comes in, the $100 million of Javelins or the Switchblade drones or anything else flies into Poland, comes over road to Lviv, and then out to Kyiv, and then all the way farther east, which is where it's really needed right now, especially the Javelins. No-fly zone is out of the question. How are the Ukrainians protecting these convoys from Russian air attack?
Well, they're pretty far away because they're from the west and Lviv and moving to the east. That western part of Ukraine is a pretty good reach. Again, the country is about 700 miles wide, so that the airstrikes and the tactical aircraft that launch from Russia would have difficulty getting there. Again, their smart weapons where they launched missiles were about only 60, we had actually a 60% failure rate. So they're able to move that as quickly as they can to the east and surreptitiously, of course. At the same time, they're also using the best of what they can from their surface-to-air missiles, their big systems, as well as their man-portable or man-pad systems. So that's the way they're able to protect that entire supply chain and try to get these out as quickly as possible.
So important now that the Ukrainians seem to at least be able to protect the airspace in the western part of the country. The Russians have gotten some cruise missiles in. During the beginning of this war, the Russians were unable really to do the combined arms movement that's so important, synchronizing their armor columns, their infantry, their airborne, and then their air support. You point out rightly that Kyiv, Kharkiv also, and especially as they try to hit Lviv and some of the other cities far at the end of the Russian operational range. Is that going to be different now that you think that they can base planes in Crimea? They've got air bases here in Russia as well that they can use to support these troops, and that they're going to be flying over mostly friendly territory that's held by Russia?
Well, I definitely believe that because, again, these aircraft are closer, and if they operate, they'll probably operate out of Russia because, of course, the maintenance and the other operations. If they move further into Crimea, I think we'll be able to see that with intelligence and satellite information. With the entire pull back to the east, they have that direct link with, of course, the country of Russia and be able to give their supplies. The original combined arms doctrine was to be able to take the countryside, surround cities, bomb them, starve them out. We saw that failed, and we see them leaving Kyiv, but you also see the cities bombed and destroyed. So they're pulling back to the border. It's almost like they're creating almost their own Iron Curtain, and the supplies and the tactical aircraft and the tactical cover will come from Russia. So they are going to reinforce that eastern border very well and possibly get over to Odessa. I could see that would be a great win for Putin if he could.
Yeah, right now when you talk about Odessa, there's a blocking force here of Ukrainians, and in terms of supplies, the Ukrainians now hold the railhead at Kherson, so it seems to have been a blocking force here in terms of trying to move any farther west. You can't occupy ground from the air, a famous saying. You can't occupy it from the ground. What do you make of the fact that the Russians have just not been able to sync these two things up? Is it something that they can learn to do, or is it a much deeper flaw inside the Russian military?
Yeah, it's something that you can learn to do, but you're learning it on the fly, and you're learning it while you're also taking losses. I mean, if you take a look at the way that we've always practiced, at least in the United States Air Force, we have Operation Red Flag at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, and we have all the aircraft, bombers, ground, command and control assets, space assets, and we really plan and execute that war simulated. But we have the aircraft flying. Russia doesn't really do that. And as you see this execution, you see this long logistics chain that got stretched out. You don't see the command and control and the coordination perfectly in sync from your aircraft to your people on the ground for close air support or even strategic bombing principles. So we have a different way of doing that in the United States, and Russia just really did not execute as much as they've advertised that they can. They did not execute in Ukraine.
Major, I wanted to jump in here real quick. I'm really fascinated by the weaponry that's being given to the Ukrainians to help in their fight, particularly the Switchblade drones that we spoke with Kelly earlier about, and also the Javelins. Can you give us an idea of which of these weapons are going to be the game changer for the Ukrainians on the ground as they continue the fight? What you're keeping an eye on as we watch some of these supplies move in?
Yeah, great question. So the Javelin system that you've heard about for a while has been great for taking out mainly tanks and very reinforced type of vehicle like that. The Switchblade is absolutely a brilliant platform by AeroVironment in California. And what they do, they have a 300 to 600. It's either a small 3-pound warhead that's for personnel, or all the way up to a 30-pound warhead that can actually take out armor. These are actually considered loitered munitions. So it's almost a drone that is doing surveillance. But as soon as you see something, you can fly it into and take that target out. So instead of seeing something and telling somebody else to do it, you can actually execute it with this platform. It's beautiful. And this is something that's much more tactical. The bigger one can go 25 miles and loiter for 50 minutes. The small one's about 5 miles. So these are really things, really great things, because you can stay very, very holed up or covert and locked up and be able to destroy a enemy force without them even knowing about it. So it's a pretty great platform.
Right, and the Ukrainians looking for any advantage they can get at this point. Major Glenn Ignazio, retired U.S. Air Force Special Operations Commander. Great insight tonight. Pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.